This video will teach you how to find slope if you're given an equation. So we want our equation in what we call slope-intercept form, and that is y equals mx plus b. And the reason why we want to isolate the y and have the y by itself in our equation is because the slope is the m value, and the b value in y equals mx plus b, the b value there represents where the graph will cross the y-axis. So in our example here, we have y equals 3x minus 2. So since the y is by itself, the number in front of the x here is the m. It's the slope. So the slope is 3. And remember what slope tells us. The slope tells us the rise over the run. And since the slope is 3, we would know it's positive, so the graph's going to go up from the left to the right. So we know that the graph is going to go upward because this is positive 3. Then we have this number right here, and this number right here at the end that is not next to the variable being multiplied, it's not a coefficient. That number is going to tell us where the line is going to hit the y-axis. So we know it's going to cross at 0, negative 2. Okay, if we look over here, so we have y equals mx plus b. So the m value is the number in front of the x, always. The coefficient of the x is the slope, so it is negative 5. And because the slope is negative, we know from the left to the right that the line is going to go downward. So the line will go down. And then the b value is the number here on the end that's being added. And as you can see, this equation we're given that there is nothing being added. So think to yourself, what can you add to anything and it's still going to be the same thing? So hopefully you're not thinking 1, because if I added $1 to your bank account, that affects things. But if I think of it as a 0 there, I can add 0 to anything and it's still the same, right? Like 4 plus 0 is still 4. But if you thought that this should be a 1, that doesn't work because then it's going to make it 5. So we need to think of the b value here is 0. So that means it's going to cross at the origin. Now, let's take a look at this example here. So if we look at example 9 here, you will notice that it's not in y equals mx plus b. But we want it to be in y equals mx plus b. We want the y to be all by itself. So we're going to highlight where the y is, the term where the y is. And our goal is going to be to solve for m. So if the m value, the slope, is not isolated, we have to solve. We have to isolate it so that the y is by itself. So we're going to solve this just like an equation. So we're going to, or linear equation here, so we're going to subtract 6. But we have a problem here. We can't do 9x minus 6. This has an x, this does not. They're not like terms. So we've actually already worked with problems like this. If you look at your notes in section 2.6, we learned how to work with equations that have more than one variable. So what we did was we just brought this down. And then the very last step to get rid of the number next to the variable, that's when we're allowed to divide. So we're going to divide everything by a negative 3. And this is going to cancel because negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1y. And that's what we want here. We wanted the y. We want it in y equals mx plus b form. But whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this whole entire side here. So we're going to have to divide everything by negative 3. So if we look here, 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3x. And then we have negative 6 divided by negative 3, and that is positive 2. So we now have the equation here in what we call slope-intercept form. We have the y all by itself. So now that the y is all by itself, we can identify the slope. So y equals mx plus b. So we know that the slope is the number here in front of the x, so the slope is -3. And because it's negative, we know the line is going to go down. And then the other number here at the end tells us that the line is going to cross the y-axis at 0, 2. So if you want to write it as 0, 2, you can, because it represents that this line is going to cross here at the y-axis at 2. All right, let's take a look at this one. So we have a problem. The y is not by itself. So I'm going to highlight where the y variable is, and I need to remove this. So we're going to subtract 6x to both sides of the equation. And remember, whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side. So that's why we're subtracting 6x on both sides. Then we're going to bring down the 8y. And we cannot do that. One has an x, one does not. They are not like terms. So we're just going to bring it down. Now, you can bring it down like this, as 16 minus 6x. But instead of doing that, I would prefer putting the negative 6x first. And then this is a positive 16, so I'm going to put the positive 16 second. And the reason why I have chosen to do that is this is my goal. My goal is y equals mx. I like the x right after the equal sign and then plus b. So that is why I put this one first, so it matches this. Okay, then my last step to get rid of the number in front of the variable we're solving for, we're going to go ahead and divide everything by 8. So when we do that, we're going to get -6 divided by 8, which comes out to be a decimal. And we talked about don't leave your slopes as a decimal because of what we're going to be working on in this class and what we're going to be using it for. So what you're going to do instead is we have a negative divided by a positive. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. And then instead of leaving our answer as 6/8, we're going to go ahead and simplify it by 2 and write it as -3/4 x. Okay, then here we have a positive 16 divided by 8, which is positive 2. So now I have the equation in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So we're asked to identify the m, so that is the number in front of the x right here. And because the slope is negative, we know the line is going to go down. And then we have the number here that's being added or subtracted. That's the b value. That's going to tell us that the line is going to cross at 0, 2. Okay, so we want to get the y by itself so we could identify the slope. So since this is all by itself, we're ready to divide right away. We're going to divide everything by a -4. So we get y equals, and then here we have a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And instead of leaving it as 2/4, we can divide both of them by 2. And we would get 1/2 x. And then here we're going to have a positive 8 divided by a -4. And positive 8 divided by -4 is -2. So now we have the equation in slope-intercept form. So now that it is in slope-intercept form, we have y equals mx plus b. And we know the number in front of the x is the m, is the slope. So the slope of this line is 1/2. And because the slope is positive, we know the line is going to go upward. And then the other number here at the end, this is where it crosses the y-axis. So the b value is -2. That tells us it's going to cross the graph at 0, -2. So that's what that tells us. Okay, so I would like for you to find some space somewhere in your notes, and let's go ahead and add a few more. to the ones that we have here. So our goal is to be able to identify the slope and where it crosses the y-axis. So to do that, we need to get the y by itself. So we're going to take the x away. So we have negative 2y equals, and we could write it like this, but instead, I'm going to put the x first. So I'm going to put this first, and then the positive 2 second. Then the very last step here, to get rid of the number in front of the y, we're going to divide everything by a negative 2. So we get y equals, and here we have a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And then we know that if there's no number in front of an x, that it's a 1. So we have a 1 over a 2, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And we have 1/2 x. And then here we have a positive 2 divided by a negative 2, and that is a negative 1. So now that we have the equation in y equals mx plus b form, we know that the number in front of x here, that is our slope, and that this number here tells us that the line is going to cross the y-axis at 0, -1. That's what that -1 tells us. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, try this next one on your own, and then once you have it, go ahead and push play and see if you are correct. So we want to get the y by itself, so we're going to take 3x away. Again, notice this is a negative 4y that we need to bring down here. And again, I want to put this first. That's me personally. And this is a positive 8, so I'm going to put plus 8 here. And our goal is to get this by itself, so the very last step here is we're going to divide everything by a -4. So here we have a negative divided by a negative, which is a positive, and 3/4 is a decimal if we divide it, so we're going to leave it as 3/4 because it's simplified. And then here we're going to have a positive 8 divided by a -4, and positive 8 divided by a -4 is -2. So now that it is in slope-intercept form, we know that our slope, our m, is the number in front of x here, so 3/4. And we know that this line would cross the y-axis at -2. So 0, -2 is where the point where it crosses the y-axis. All right, let's try one last one here. So we want to get the y by itself, and since it's already isolated, we're ready to divide right away in this problem. So we're going to divide everything by a -3. Here we have a positive divided by a negative, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 4/3, 3 can't go into 4. If you were to divide it with your calculator, it's a decimal, so we're just going to leave it as -4/3 x. And then here we have a -9 divided by a -3, and that's going to make a positive, and 3 goes into 9 3 times. So now that we have our equation in slope-intercept form, our m, our slope, is -4/3, so that's going to tell us that the line goes down. And then our b value is +3. And that tells us the line is going to cross the graph at 0, 3.